Hi, Niharika.
Hey Aniket, hey Chaitanya, pleasure meeting you again. So talking about myself, I think all I can say is that I have been in audit industry for last 10 years and I have hung around quite a long time to share some experiences with you guys, and I guess we can all share something about what we've all been through, been in Big Fours, and like currently, what I can say is that I think finally I've decided to take a break from Big Fours and try my hands into more of a consulting and entrepreneurship kind of role. And currently, what I'm doing is I've seen the audit side. Now I want to see the other side and like the consulting and how exactly things are done at the ground level. So I've joined a firm called Pierian Services. We are providing consulting services to mid-size and small-size startups who are planning to go big in India. And they need some sort of our assistance to tackle with the Big Fours and like provide, get ready for getting audit ready for them. So apart from India, we have our services in US, where we are again sort of providing consulting to companies who are again getting not audit ready, but they are more towards IPO readiness. So this is more of a SPAC and IPO consulting sort of model where we help them to get ready for acquisition or for getting listed on on New York Stock Exchange. So that's a little bit about me and my company. But yeah, I think that's
And
I want to
that's
know
actually
about you.
pretty exciting. I
Yeah.
mean, generally the traditional domain where chartered accountants generally think of going is either tax or audit, and within audit also it's nice to know that there's something like an audit consulting also, where you basically are providing professional services to get those small or mid-sized firms to be audit ready, because we all know whenever we are being audited, a company is being audited, the kind of data, etc., is required, or even even at the time when the company is going through an integration or a merger kind of a phase, the kind of data that these companies need for the investors to chew on, it's a humongous task. So I mean, this is a fantastic. It's great to know that you guys are working in this domain where you advise or you give your consultation to these up and coming companies to be
Yeah.
audit ready or a diligence ready or an IPO ready.
Right.
That's fantastic.
I think that's the next sector for consulting, I feel, because there has been such a burst of startups in India that, and Big Fours being Big Fours are so structured and like available for big mature companies that there needs to be a consulting for these small, medium-sized companies who can, like we can custom and tailor make our consulting suggestions and solutions for them. So I definitely see a lot of growth there, and I feel very excited for your company. What you're doing is something very interesting for me as well.
I mean, there's very less networking amongst us chartered accountants to get things done, and things done on a short-term basis or immediate basis in an effective way. So what we intend to do with Fintastek is create or build some platform where us chartered accountants, to begin with, us chartered accountants can connect and get our work done in a more efficient manner. Then it could be anything. It could be referring someone for a job, or if someone is applying in a firm where we have someone amongst our panel who has some lead and can help them out basically as to how they need to be, what they need to do to be interview ready, or how they can prepare themselves. And also I mean, the institute does a really great job in making us technically ready, but when we go out to find a job or to run a business, we need a lot of soft skills as well. So that is also one space where we feel that by organizing these events and sessions where we invite individuals like yourself who can share their experiences. So I'm sure the wider audience would grab something useful out of it. So yeah, great to have you here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the underlying thought is, the more people come together, collective knowledge is always, it multiplies, right? Like, and we
Yeah,
just want to sort of help, create a semblance of a community, which I think personally he and I identified did not really exist. At least we did not come across, a tight, strong community where, alums were sort of helping each other out in a meaningful way. And it's a long road. Obviously, we don't see that happening overnight. But this is just the little bit that we can do to sort of give back to the community and help kids qualifying now have better information than we did when we qualified a few years back. And that's
right.
really the basic idea behind this, and that's why I think we're genuinely super stoked to have you here, someone with genuine years behind her back with like solid experience doing interesting work. I think a lot of freshers and aspiring kids are gonna hopefully see this and maybe make a better decision, right? That's
I
really what
hope
we're
so.
trying to do. That's all.
That's true.
So
Like I'm here to share my 2 cents as well. Like I have learned everything through my experiences, and there are definitely some things which I feel somebody would have told me 10 years back when I joined, because I joined like I did not even attend college. I went for 1 year of college, and that's one thing that I guess 10-year-old me, I would want to tell her that don't miss out college, because
Yeah,
that's so
yeah.
important. And just because it's available right now, and it's a very hot take, I know,
that's
but
true.
and it's very tempting to do that and not go to college, but it's definitely something in hindsight I feel I should have done and waited for my turn to get into articleship. But yeah, like there are definitely a few things I want to tell some while I joined a big four, like what to look for. And I was just like a college girl who joined. So definitely some things I can tell myself, a younger self of mine.
Please do. I
Definitely.
mean,
So
I
why
think
don't
that's a
why
great
don't we start
question.
off by you sharing your initial experience of how you joined, how you stumbled upon a big four, and what was going in your mind, because see, amongst a lot of students, there's always this decision as to whether I should join a big four or I should join a mid-sized firm. I want to learn more. I want to learn tax also. I want to learn audit also. So I'll join probably a small firm or a mid-sized firm. But if I go to big four, then probably I'll get only very specialized knowledge. So what was going in your mind when you joined a big four at the time of your articulation? What drove this decision?
My journey into Big Fours or just in CA is very interesting. I guess when we are all in school, none of us know what a CA is or how can you proceed in a commerce field. But so my dad's a chartered accountant, and like he really wanted me or my brother to pursue commerce. And so my brother went into science in the science field, and he had one shot at me, and he really lured me into commerce by telling me how CA is such a lucrative profession and how it's a money making machine. And he showed me some balance sheet. He told me like, audit fees is like, look at the audit fees of these big companies. Like he showed me, I guess I remember the one balance sheet I saw was of L&T, and it had like some audit fees on its P&L of about 2 crores or something. And he told me that, look at this auditor is making 2 crores. Little did I know at that time that it was a big four who was probably making that money, and it wasn't me. But I definitely got lured into that. And that's how I decided, because I wanted to make a lot of money at that time. And I was like, definitely getting into this. So that's how I decided to take commerce in the first place and started pursuing my love for CA. Started exploring my love for CA actually. My love for Big Fours or my learning towards a Big Four, like that there's something called as Big Four, was also not out of my research of a Big Four, but again, I was watching this movie once, and I had heard about like there is a KPMG, there is a EY, there's a PwC, like in the accounting world, but One day I was watching Transformers, and I think there was the scene where Optimus Prime is fighting in New York somewhere, and he flies through a building which had KPMG written on top of it. And that's when I thought, like, this is probably a very cool company that, it's product placing in Transformers, something like that. And that's how I picked my Big Four. So I don't know
I'll
if
have
it
to
was.
watch Transformers again. I have certainly missed it.
I'm pretty sure, like, I hope everyone who goes back and watches that movie doesn't see that scene,
I
because
think
I know that
I
MetLife
think not.
building is a very famous one.
Yeah, I think not many people can say that a flying car defined their career. So I mean, that's a great story.
So that's how I picked KPMG, for being a cool company and, knowing where to place their products and getting people excited. And I thought, okay, let's try my hands over here. And like somehow I got to know, like, it's a very young Big Four as well. So probably,
Yeah, that's true.
um, and definitely had like a very good experience there. So I don't regret the decisions I've made, but my road to making those decisions was definitely not informed, like, going by the experience or something. So yeah, that's
Right.
how I picked my Big Four, and I started
And
very great.
so did you do your articleship from KPMG as well?
Yes, so I completed my articleship in KPMG. I spent about 3.5 years over there. So 3 years and post qualification until I completed my CA. I was in KPMG. Post that, for my post qualification experience, like, I had the Indian side of like taste of the Indian audits, and I kind of wanted to get into this offshore model setup, and that was something that was growing a lot around 2012, 2013. So I know Deloitte came up with it first, and then EY followed. So I wanted to join the US gap basically, and I wanted to learn how US gap works. And I had heard a lot about how US companies and this US audits are very organized. So I sort of wanted to align myself with that work culture. And that's the first time I took a step for my career in line with what kind of work culture I want to work with. So I definitely figured that 6 days a week is not for me, and working late nights is not for me. So that's the first time I decided that I want to work where I know that I'll have weekends to myself, and I can build a life where I can plan my day, and it's not like helter skelter 2 months I'm out in a different kind of city or a village for a manufacturing company. So that's how I decided to go to EY. I started giving my interviews there. The more I got to know about how global services work, I actually got more interested, and I was like, this is a good career move for me. So that's when I decided to join EY Global Services. And then I was there till, I guess, 2019, when I got an opportunity to move to US after that with EY, and I joined EY in Northeast region. Majorly, I was associated with hospitality industry. So I guess few big giants are in Northeast. Their headquarters are in Northeast. So that's where I was mostly. And then COVID struck, and I basically moved to EY US in October 2019, just 2 months before COVID. And then I spent 1 year in a lockdown. Uh, I was like in a 1-bedroom apartment living by myself. So definitely had a lot of time for reflection, and my thoughts, and me and my thoughts basically spent a lot of time together. So then I decided that, it's time to come back, and there's no point living in a foreign country without any family or without any emotional support. So that's when I decided to come back last year in December. And then I took a break. I just wanted to like regroup and think with my own thoughts again. Like, I know I had 1 year, but that was a very different thought process. But with my family and environment, I wanted to think through like what I want to do in my life, because the next step, like, I had already spent 10 years in Big Four. So I was like, what now? And now do I want to like be a partner in this industry? Because once I become a manager, then it's the same thing, manager, senior manager. Then, like, unless I want to be a partner in this Big Four, there's no point going back, because as so that's when I thought about, studying or joining something else. So I started weighing my options. I wanted to get into fintech is something that interested me. I could clearly see, like with EY, um, EY is like heavily investing in digital and automation of audit. So I definitely figured that, next 5 or 10 years, a few auditors might be struggling for their jobs, or like definitely need to have a new learning part of their role. So I wanted to get into fintech, or I also wanted to explore this idea of consulting, or if I could actually be part of, growing something. Like one of the things I figured when I went to US also was that people really took a lot of pride in their job, and they really felt like they were part of a process, or they were contributing to something, which I did not feel so much in India. And I thought, like, now I want to do something where I feel like I'm part of something and I'm going to develop something. It can be a company also, like I'm developing a company, or I'm growing something which is like something small and it goes big. So those are the kind of things I was exploring. And so I took a good long break of, like, I guess 3.5 months or 4 months almost. And it was probably the right time when I also got to know, like, but two of my ex-colleagues from EY had quit, and they were starting this new service line called Assurance, which is more like assurance consulting. And I got in touch with them. I got to know what they are planning to do, what is their vision. And I thought, like, it's probably a very niche uh, consulting division, which I haven't heard of in my experience till now, that, we're providing pre-audit services in a very simple term, but it's sort of like providing consulting to small startups who don't know how right now how to tackle big fours and how to be ready for their audits. So definitely got interested there. So yeah.
Definitely, that's wow, that's a really rich 10 years, I would say. And first of all, I can't even imagine how difficult that 1 year would have been for you in the US. So kudos to you to like actually power through it. And I'm really
Certainly.
glad that you found your calling, came back, and here we are talking. Um, and one more thing, I definitely understand what you're saying about growing something. I think that's a very good motivator, because a lot of times I feel when we feel jaded, and when we look at what we're doing every day, we sort of get into that perennial question that does it even matter, right? Like what I'm doing, does it count
Yeah.
towards something? And I think it's always nice to know that you're towards something that's going to build and create, rather than something that's reporting on purely reporting on something that's already happened, right? Like there's
Yeah.
a constructive thought to your action.
Yeah.
So, and definitely I think you're right when you say that this is a niche and very exciting space, because I mean we've been in big fours, right? Um we've seen the kind of demands a proper auditor should have, in fact. Let's not even call it like something that's outlandish, right? Like these are the requirements that a company should prepare. But and even I faced this. So with Big Four, the thing was in audit, we had like really big, mature clients who had massive resources to get their finance in order. But the minute I moved to deal advisory and we started working with a lot of target companies, which are again, startups or medium sized and or mid market companies, as you would call it, right? Uh,
Yeah.
uh, you know, the minute you go on tally and everything is in a mess, uh, I think operationally a lot of
Tally.
I think operationally a lot of founders either underestimate or do not realize the value of proper reporting, not just to
Yeah.
get their audit in order, but also to really understand how they can grow as a business. And I think
Yeah.
I think what you're doing has a lot of potential, a lot of use cases. So very exciting space, and super psyched to be
It's
speaking to you
the
and want to learn more about that.
it's the new motto that we are trying to put out there, that, money management is the new self-care. and it's more for the companies and also for the people actually, like, because one thing that now that we're exploring the space, we're realizing it that all these startups are started by probably these operations people who are engineers or experts in their field, and finance kind of takes a backseat until there is a requirement for funding, or if there is a big investor who comes in place, and that's when they realize that their checks and balances don't match, and then everything is messed up, and it's a huge pile of mess that we receive, and then it's definitely nothing is impossible, but it's probably something that one can be aware about. And if we have a solution which doesn't take away from their business sense, or which doesn't get them much involved in getting into finance, and we kind of provide them a solution which gets them sorted from maybe not day one, but maybe like as soon as possible once they have their feet on the ground. So it's that's the plan. And I think with the number of startups we have in India right now, it's a huge market.
And not only startups, even the private equity market is booming. A lot of these guys are going to want their finance in order sooner rather than later. It's going to be a big wake-up call for everyone, and I think you guys are ripe in the market at the right time. So kudos to you guys to sort of look at an opportunity and sort of create a company that serves to probably a requirement that people have not quite realized yet, but they're going to realize it pretty soon.
And with the kind of funding, and the kind of deals that are happening, and rather than the size, I mean the quantum of deals that are happening in terms of numbers. I mean, this is a very essential. The service that Pierian is providing for those targets it's a very essential thing to have. So
tell us a bit about your experience. Like, okay, this is a very a question that I personally have for you. Okay, you've had a rich experience with large organized companies, structured environment, and then you've moved and transitioned into a completely dynamic, unstructured, open-ended sort of a role. Two questions around this, right? How do you sort of look at the structured environment versus the unstructured environment, right? And the specific skills and mindset transitions that you had to make to sort of, move from one to the other. And the second is, how does managing teams and managing people change from, again, structured large organizations to nimble, leaner, newer environments where policies are also getting crystallized as you go along, right? So talk a little bit about that experience.
So I would say that that point comes when sometimes it's easier to know that what you don't want to do than knowing what you want to do. So at least I figured that I knew I don't want to stay in this organization where my career is already chalked out, and I know that I'm growing because of a career progression that's meant to be. And I was not okay with the fact that, there were 100 other people who were doing this with me, and I wasn't getting that personal job satisfaction where I wanted to do more. I knew I had a lot of ideas, and because of the structure and restrictions and like how everything has a process in a mature company already, I was feeling a bit restricted. Like, how can I put my ideas forward?
Right.
So that's when I wanted to get out of it. And as I mentioned, digital is something that really excited me. I wanted to dive into Power BI and digital analytics tools, which I knew I had a restriction when I was in a Big 4, and they have their own tools. And so I wasn't getting to explore what I wanted to do. And then that's when I decided that, this is not for me in the long term. And that's how I decided to leave. What I wanted to do next was a completely different ball game. So I knew what I didn't want to do, and I knew that I'm good at it. So at least I knew that I do a good job. If I have to go back, take a year's break, I a big four will take me. So that I had as a safety net. So be good and be confident of at least, you should know that you have a fallback option is what I would say. Like so that is one thing. The other thing, when I got in touch with Abhishek, who's the founder of Assurance Services in Pierian, I got to know that this is something like audit but not audit. So that was the first thing that got my interest. Then I got to know that we're getting consulting services. We are not. The other thing that kind of bothered me was in an audit that the face time you get with people, like I was like the people I was talking to was probably a CFO, and that too, like a partner would talk to a CFO. I am just working with, like, say, the accounting team and the finance team, and sometimes, like, I knew that in a statutory audit, at least, okay, so in a listed company in US, we had a lot of value. Auditors were treated like, uh, we have to get a good audit out of it, and it mattered to them, like, what kind of qualifications are coming out of out of an audit. But in a private company or in a Indian subsidiary of a foreign company, I have seen the difference where, it didn't matter really. Like, what you're doing is more like for compliance. So although personally I learned a lot, I learned how to work, I learned about corporate culture, but having that in last 10 years, now I wanted to do something where it mattered for the company also, that if I'm providing them any service, it should add value to them. So I guess that was a transition over the age. If at age of 20, if I would I want to take this risk? Probably not. But after 10 years, when I have done the corporate grind, I know that uh, I know my basics, I know my
Right.
core. uh, then I decided that now I can take a risk. Like, this is when I decided to take a
But
move.
specifically, if you think about like the working style, I mean, I understand. I mean, I also get it. Like I'm going through something similar, right? Like I went from KPMG, which is a 1,70,000 employee organization,
Yeah.
to a 6 people firm is where I'm at now, right? So that's what I sort of want to ask you around, like what in terms of working, like we understand how structured and trodden the path is in a big four, right? Everything, the font, the template,
Yeah.
the hierarchy, the designation, everything is fixed, like set in stone, and you know what you need to do, and it's like an input output sort of a
Yeah.
environment, and then moving from there to a situation where things are open ended, it's unstructured. So the mindset adjustment that you had to make, uh, to be ready to handle and thrive in the unstructured environment, in an organization where policies are not defined as well.
Right. I think that was a very conscious decision that, yeah, I agree. I know what you're asking. So when got into conversation with Pyrian and I wanted to join here, I knew that, it's a new firm, and I will probably be part of policy making and deciding small things like, timesheets,
Yeah,
oh my god, like Big Four's timesheets. And then here it's something like I am part of the process where we are building the process for timesheets. So I think it's again about interests. If you want a set practice or a set administrative structure,
yeah,
it will definitely intimidate you. But if you
yeah,
are game for that, and if you want to
yeah,
set up and you want to experience setting up such a thing, then I think it kind of increases your knowledge. And like,
yeah,
I never thought that even doing these administrative things will teach me so many smaller things about a business. And sometimes in hindsight, I do appreciate like how much we already had in a Big Four, and I probably never realized, like, having a small admin process like circulating a holiday list is
Yeah.
already like set up there. And
Yeah.
now we are doing, we are setting it up ourselves, like fixing the
Yeah.
holidays and everything. But I'm enjoying that now. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't bother me. And it's not audit related, but it is part of my work. So it kind of gives me a break from the technical work that I have to do. So at this point of my career, I'm enjoying doing all that. That's what gives me that sense of belonging. Okay, that I am building
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
business, and
Yeah.
10 years down the line, when this is set in stone, I can probably say, okay, I was part of the building process.
Wow. That sounds amazing. I mean, very anecdotal, but just yesterday I was trying to update my firm's website, and I was like following up with the guy who builds the website and get like the partner's bio corrected. And then I was thinking to myself, dude, KPMG must have like 20,000 pages on a website. We have never had to even like bother with anything. There's just so much work that happens for you in these big
Yeah,
companies that you do not
yeah,
realize, right? Like from setting up a new joinee's email account to setting up the Notion account. I mean, it's like part secretarial, part administrative,
yeah,
but you're absolutely right. I mean, when you're open to doing everything, you just feel much more like you belong, because it stops feeling like a platform and start feeling like more like how a house would be, where everything is
Get a
yours.
sense of ownership.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Get a sense
right.
of ownership that I
Yeah,
am building this from scratch.
correct. It's very
Yep.
entrepreneurial that way.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
So like again, something very well, I talked about holiday list. So like next week is Eid, and so it's initially we had it on 20th as a holiday, and then it generally changes. So I and my director were kind of contemplating, like now that it's like the moon is coming out on Wednesday, I think. So we were sitting and like contemplating for 5 minutes if we keep the holiday on Tuesday or a Wednesday, and then I was like, let's keep it to Tuesday because people would have planned. And like I was like, wow, this is something I wouldn't have done. And it's interesting for me, but it might just be like a procedural
yeah,
thing for
yeah,
someone. But then
yeah.
again, it's a personal choice. So
And how
um,
about the actual work? Because that's again something that would be very interesting, right? Like for example, in EY or KPMG, there is a structure that you join. There is a hierarchy. There are like 5 people above you, 3 people below you. You have the जो हम कहते हैं वो like carry forward work papers that you get to like look at and sort of
yeah,
replicate, right? Coming to a new organization where you're starting afresh, there's a lot of like thought leadership that you'll have to take in terms of establishing processes, establishing workflow, not only for yourself, for your team, for the client. How's that journey been for you?
I think so. You had also talked about the difference between a big four and a small setup firm that you're setting up yourself. One of the things I have figured is the difference of peer group. So if I were a manager in a big four, I will probably have 50 other managers where I can
Yeah,
go and share my
yeah,
problems and be like, okay, how are you doing it? And I'm realizing this, that there is that difference, that you are sort of independent in that way, and it's tough to take decisions, like that decision making part, and then you have to take that decision, and it can probably go good, like it'll probably give you results or not. So um, that risk taking thing, or that element,
Attitude.
is also something I mean, it's good at times. I mean, it's I take it with a pinch of salt. Like sometimes I'm very scared. I'm like, okay, this is a big decision. How am I going to take it? And but sometimes it works, and then it's like very fulfilling when it goes in a good direction.
yeah,
I think that's one of the differences that I definitely feel. There is a bit of a contrast there. Um, Apart from that, I think in terms of team size, like I was probably, when I was in EVA, I was an assistant manager, and we had a team of 50 people, and this was just one of the other 50 teams. Like now we are probably a team of 20, and We are two managers, and I can see the difference in how people look up to us here versus in a Big Four. Like a manager in Big Four was probably like, yeah, like, there are too many other people for you to look up to, or if you don't like your manager, you can go and talk to anyone else. But here, it's like if you really have to, that designation means a bit more in this role or in this setup, because they only have two people to look up to, and then if you are not on your best behavior, then it kind of spoils the entire team structure, I feel. So those are the softer things where I feel like, I have made a difference in my style of working. And probably in a Big Four, I was a little more relaxed, saying that, it's okay. Like I'm not a role model for anyone. I mean, everyone's gonna grow eventually. But yeah, so that's the difference. I mean, I don't know if you guys have also felt that.
Yeah, I mean,
Certainly. Yeah.
certainly. I think we've all seen that happen. I think I was telling Chaitanya the other day on call. Like for me, when I was in deal advisory, right? Like it was input output. Like all I did was I would get data. I knew how I had to process it. There was very limited. I mean, the challenges were more operational if the data is bad, or uh, timelines are steep, right? And you need to get work done. You need two other people to like uh, get their work done so your work gets done. That was really the challenge, right? And now moving to a completely different environment where I'm given a problem statement that is just a sentence, and then I'm given like 15 days, and I realized I spent a week just brainstorming how to sort of structure the problem itself, right? That's not something I'd ever had to do before. So while that's very entrepreneurial and I understand it's very thrilling, it's also super challenging. And I think that's like a trial by fire, right? Like when you start taking decisions that matter,
Yeah.
that's when you really put yourself in the firing zone, and you it either pays off amazingly or it doesn't. But either way, I think you learn a
Yeah.
lot from it and you grow.
Yeah.
Okay, so Niharika, why don't you talk a bit about? Uh, I mean, I would love to know more on the journey that a CA needs to make from qualifying to becoming employable. So the kind of skills that help a chartered accountant stand out, develop a personal brand, and become a desirable employee. And maybe talk about your experience in recruiting CAs along the way.
I think I'm going to take this in two parts: post qualification and post once you've spent 5 years
Yeah,
as
yeah,
a CA in the profession. So I think when I qualified, I can talk about myself. When I qualified, and uh, so I had quit KPMG in September because I wanted to focus on my exams in November, and so that's when I took my first break in career. So I qualified there. I was lucky enough to like qualify in that attempt. After that, when I had to pick like what I want to do, so I think the first, so if you're not from a Big Four, the first thing is everybody wants to join a Big Four. Uh, and if you are from a Big Four, then you start looking at industry or you start going into consulting. That's the first trend that I've seen. And
yeah.
global, a lot of people join global services, but that's probably 2 or 3 years after they've worked in hardcore Big Four, and that's when they come there. So when it's something similar. I had already worked in a Big Four in the audit practice, so I knew that the work culture is not going to work for me. So eventually, when I decided to move there, one of the big challenges I faced was moving into US Gap. I saw the difference in how refined people were in talking. Since they had a lot of face time with US people, and the way they talk over there, it's super refined, the way they talk. And like, even if they're doing like 2 or 3 audit areas, like they know them in and out, and they know the professional, like the technical terms, how we use it. Contrary to what I see in uh, in India practice, like we are probably jack of all kind of scenario in our articleship, but so that's one thing that I figured, like if I know two things, it's okay to know two things, but know them well. And that's something which I resonate now also, now that I'm in a position where I am taking interviews of qualifieds and of people who are pursuing their CAs. One of the things I look for is, I don't expect them to know everything. Like I don't want them to have worked on all of the balance sheet or P&L items or have done entire end-to-end audit. But what you've done, you should know what you've done. Like if you probably just done cash or BRS, just know what a BRS is. Like sometimes the biggest gap in knowledge I see is that qualified people, they probably don't even know right now that BRS kaise banta hai. So that is surprising and shocking to me, and that kind of makes me sad. And that's one of the things I feel like, what you do, and maybe you've not got a chance to work on things. Like one of the most common answers I get is like, I was part of a team, I never got to work on something by myself. But my major learning, I would say that if I was in a big team, I never got to work on everything by myself. A lot of my learning comes from shadow learning. So I would see my seniors and my staffs working, or my peer staffs working. So I would just see what they are doing, or I was listening to a lot of conversations. So I think one of the things we miss out on is environmental learning and peer learning, where if we are just focused on what you are doing on your laptop, you will not be able to do everything in 3 years of articleship. You have to absorb from your environment. So that is one thing. And I mean, when I am taking an interview, I don't want everything to have passed through your hands. If I say, have you worked on cash, like, or receivables balance, I don't want them to have worked end to end on it. If you know the steps, you should be able to do it. Like, again, it's one of the differences where I feel because our module and our model is structured in that way, like CA, that everything has to be like, learn your sections, learn your accounting standards. Like we are in that mode that if we don't know that by heart, that means we don't know it. So sometimes just having that thought in your mind is enough, I feel. So that is one thing I want people to develop, and they could develop. It's not that hard. Like just maybe go back to your resume and see what you've written there. A lot of other thing that I see is that a lot of resumes, they all of them write, ICFR audits, SOX audits, and STAT audits. But when I talk to them in an interview, they'll be like, no, this I only did for 2 months. So that I feel is a, if you've put it for, even for grabbing eyeballs, then know something about it. You can't come to an interview and say that I've only done it for 2 months. So either fake it properly or don't fake it at all. Like just don't put it on your resume. So I think
that's lazy flapping, right? That's lazy flapping. You can just talk to someone who's done it and internalize it, and then nobody is the wiser.
I mean, it doesn't, and it's available on YouTube everywhere. If you want to know about SOX, ICFR, just read about it. And I mean, and there will be two things on your resume that you would have done end to end. And even in your articleship, I think one of the things I would have told 10-year-old me was that maybe just work on two things, but do them right. Like, learn them by heart. Like if you are working on revenue to care, like staffs ko milta hi nahi tha, but if you are probably doing FA also, fixed assets, just know in and out everything about it, so that if anybody asks you to your level about fixed assets, you should know. And one of like a very interesting interview that I had was like, I talked to CAs, and when we talk about audit, nobody talks about assertions. Nobody talks about completeness, accuracy. We all know the traditional, like, how we perform those 2-3 main steps. Everybody knows that. And I interviewed one company secretary who wanted to get into audit. He was a qualified CS, and it was probably the first time I heard somebody talk about assertions. I was like, how do you audit cash? And he's like, for completeness, we will check this. For accuracy, we'll check this. And I was like taken aback. I was like, what this guy is talking in assertions? And I mean, that's one of the things, like, do your homework before your interview. A lot of times, because you're a Big 4 employee, you also, like, I am guilty of that. That, if I go for an interview for another Big 4, I kind of take it for, I have taken it for granted in my past that, um, like, it's just a procedural thing. I'm just gonna go there and they're gonna take me because it's just a Big 4 move. And I have messed up so bad. I froze on the interviews front. Like, when they asked me questions, I was fumbling. I wasn't sure of my answer. And that's when I figured, like, that's how you stuff it up. Like, you have to do your homework and you have to know your assertions, your basic things. And so, yeah, I think just doing that homework and reading your resume before sending it, or before one day before your interview, is very important.
It's interesting that you mentioned about a company secretary coming for an interview for an assurance related job and talking about assertions. There's a lot of smoke in our hiring industry around this entire attempts thing. And I mean, तुमने एक attempt से ज़्यादा लिया, you don't deserve a job. I mean, the fact that a company secretary is coming and talking about assertions, I mean, it doesn't matter whether you have, taken 2 attempts, 3 attempts, 4 attempts, or 5 attempts. If you know your shit, you're going to make it. That it's as simple as that. And there are countless examples, amongst our peer group also who have taken multiple, a couple of attempts, but they are doing extremely well in their respective organizations or these schools or wherever they are right now. So it really it's really demotivating sometimes that certain hiring managers or certain organizations, they just filter out people as if they just don't matter. But honestly, they're missing out on certain diamonds who are sitting there, and because of for due to any reason they might have messed up. And this is not something that I'm saying because I took 2 attempts, but this is a general observation that I've made.
So nobody asks like an MBA how many CAT exams you gave, right? So like, why does it matter? And like, if you have the things you need in a job description and it matches your a person's resume, then the attempts, like, it's probably a filter that they use it to make it convenient. But everybody who's cleared in first attempt is probably not a genius in terms of practical experience.
Definitely not.
So I mean,
but not taking away anything from people who have cleared in 1 attempt or have scored ranks. I mean, of course, I mean, they work hard and they completely deserve it. But I mean, looking at the trend, I feel that certain organizations, by following this trend, are missing out on diamonds. I'm not saying everyone is a diamond, but there are a lot of diamonds out there in the other pool as well. So
I mean, it's a factor, but then again, it's part of the game. I feel like वो तो 50 ही है ना, like rank holders तो 50 हैं and first attempters भी कितने होंगे, like 3% तो clearance ही होता है. So out of that, how many are there who are first? But after that, there is a whole industry now. Even there, like, if first attempt is not a filter for you, and I think that's something probably you will relate to more from, because you're from IB, and I guess in these investment banks, first attempt is like this real big thing, which I have figured, like, I know at one point when I was applying in Goldman Sachs, and like first attempt is something that they put as their job description, that first attempt is preferred. And then I'm like, okay, I didn't even apply there. I was like, just chuck it, it's not for me.
They're lost.
I don't want to go there anymore. So so that's one thing. But apart from the companies, who prefer big, first attempters or Big 4s, I think that only gets you like your first attempt, your rank gets you your first job, I feel. And after that, it has to be your experience that should matter. And for that, I think it's completely in your hands. In like a first job, again, a lot of us, it's that everyone is a fresher. They're just looking for their first crack, and wherever they get it, they take it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but your second and your third job move
Yeah.
is where you can probably, play the field and
Yeah.
make that choice. So at least be conscious of, like, I was very conscious of my second move or my third move, because that is where people will start defining your own thought process. Another thing that I feel, because we have such a lack of community right now, we are so disaggregated. We don't know what others are doing. All of us are limited to our friends or our peer group in our CA firm. So it's so nice to see that we have this community build up, and we have a platform for dialogue, and we get to know what others are even thinking of doing. So we'll be able to probably leverage that. So
So the
I
thing that
definitely.
the thing the this particular thing, like, I mean, it's great that you mentioned this. We have access, I mean, over the years, I mean, in our experience of 5 to 6 years and your experience of 10 years, we have had access to such industry experts and veterans who have spent, their entire life in one industry. They've literally seen the industry evolve in the last 25 to 30 years. So, if in any way we can leverage that and, bring that knowledge out to other, acquaintances of ours who are, like you mentioned, a little disaggregated and they don't know what's happening. So, and at any point, if we are able to do that, I mean, you'll be more than, I mean, we would be satisfied with what we have started. That brings me to actually another interesting question. I mean, what are the industries where you have, typically worked in your tenure of 10 years?
So I have worked in FMCG. I mean, I have audited a big client from FMCG. Then I have worked in retail shortly, like for a very brief period. I was working for a manufacturing company that was like building, I think, satellites, like all these dish TV and all this manufacturing. So a lot of manufacturing driven clients I have done, and like that is. And then in on the US front, I have done aviation, real estate, hospitality, and yeah, I think real estate and hospitality have been a big one, and then
So, we should
aviation.
ideally have one more session where, you can share your knowledge around FMCG or real estate or aviation or whatever you are comfortable with on, Fintastek, and that would be great to start off. What do you think, Aniket?
Yep. Would be amazing. Um, Also, sorry to circle back, but wanted to quickly ask you again. So you mentioned that your employability obviously changes from when you just qualify. I think that's when it's more technical and you look at the hard skills of someone. And then, I mean, you briefly mentioned on how, you can really leverage your second and third move, because essentially your first job happens to you and then you make the second job happen, right? So the
Yeah.
employability that you were talking about, that changes over time. The 5 years down the road, what are the key focus areas for someone to really leverage and break through the gatekeeping attitude that is out there in many jobs, and end up in more selective environments just through their maybe stronger networking skills or their personal brand building abilities?
I think that's a great question. Yeah, I missed out on that earlier. There are a few things which I feel like in my first job, I mean, I was lucky enough to absorb that out, but there definitely, if I have to give like a 5 point checklist to somebody who's joining a big four or a first job, I think one of the things one has to learn there before they make the next move is to learn how to the email writing skills. I think that's a big one. Like, and it's not even something where probably you have to wait to get your first job. It's something you have to know. A good email writing skill definitely takes you a long way. It is your first impression on a person, whoever you're talking to, be it HR, be it a technical round or anything. So email writing skills, how you talk and knowing your audience, like if you're talking to a director and or if you're talking, like even in your tech round, like a lot of things, it's never just about technical, you know your accounting standards, you know your tax, it's fine, but can you talk about it? Like your conversation should not end at what the section says. You need to have like that broad understanding of what to do with that section, like
Point of view,
and
basically.
you have to have your point of view, yeah, and that only happens when you, I think, talk to people or you read about it, not just the technical, but I think that need of having those case studies and reading of those case studies is very important. I first felt the need of it, I think, when I moved to US. I again, like, having worked in a US offshore for 4 years, I had developed my skill of, writing emails and talking, and I thought I was very good at it in terms of how I talk. But when I moved to US, one of the things I realized was no, I mean, if I go to a client in India, I will probably just go and talk about, uh, I need these 5 documents, ye de do, and then it's like, okay, I will give it, and it's end of conversation. When I moved to US, one of the things I noticed was you go there, you talk to your client for 10 minutes about absolutely anything but work.
Yeah.
And it's like you're talking about golf, you're talking about basketball, you're talking about football,
Yeah.
and then in the end it's like, oh, I also need this document, and then they're like, yeah, of course I'll do that. So I think that personal touch of, um, like just knowing what you need and asking it is not enough after a point. Maybe um, at a staff level, very initially, at a senior level, it will get you through, but uh, when you are a little more mature, you have to know how to talk to a client, and that I'm saying apart from work. And
Yeah.
it will get you through. Like if you go and ask your client 5 things, he will give it to you, but there is no personal touch in that, and there is no recall factor in that. He's not interested in you. You are just another manager from a big four or a senior from a big four who's come and asked.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you have that connect, that is when you see yourself growing in having that client. And like, if you want to be a partner on that client later, or
Right.
if you aspire to be a partner, that's how you will build a connect, because that person who you're talking to today is probably a manager, but tomorrow he will also be a
Yeah.
CFO of that company, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
um and another thing that I saw was like, the the lack of hobbies probably, and I'm guilty of that too,
Yeah.
because as in CA, again, because we don't have that culture of going to a place and interacting with people, it's again very remote. um, we never have that platform of socializing, or having cultural events, or an option of developing a hobby. And with people like me, or at least a lot of people of my age who've skipped college and who've directly gone to office, probably never had the opportunity of joining any clubs. Or so I struggled in US in terms of having a topic of conversation. Like, I
Right.
don't play any sports. Okay, I binge watch a lot of Netflix, but that, I mean, is again something you can't talk about a lot with your client. So I think one of the things I figured was having some sort of hobby, which you can develop. And I'm not saying
Yeah.
that it's a marketing tool, but it has to come organically. Even if you're
Yeah.
playing an instrument, or if you are into dramatics or anything, but it has to be something you have to develop your passion. And now that I am working on that, I have realized it's harder than learning accounting
Yeah.
standards to
Yeah.
find your
Yeah.
passion and to find
No, I
your own
think
hobby.
I think that's a very, very, very valid point, because I think after a point, I think we are all so focused growing up to acquire the hard skills to get the concepts right. Uh, we forget that at the end of the day we have to work with people, and right, like, and people like to work with people they like. It's it.
Right.
I mean, you don't need to be the most brilliant guy in the room. You need to be the most trusted or liked guy in the room to get.
Likability.
You need to have a reliability, trustability, and likability are, I would say, the three major, personal traits or brands that you need to sort of build. Uh, and that's really, really true. Even I completely agree that, it's important to, uh, like, when you're talking at work, when you're interacting with clients or your colleagues, to build strong relationships, interpersonal relationships first. Focus on genuinely building those relationships and investing in those relationships, and then work would happen organically and would be like an after fact that it would flow through you.
Yeah.
Just having a narrow mindset of getting what you need and getting out of there, yeah, it can work in the shorter term, but in the long run, it's not going to help you out. And I completely agree with you on what you've said.
I think that is something I have also. So there is this big fight among, CA versus MBA, and why
Yeah,
CA is better or MBA is better. So I think one of the things that I can see, like my brother is an MBA, is that probably, uh, not talking about work, but when he sits with his client and when he talks, I can see that difference of, um, and just in case the client happens to be from an IIM, there is this sudden bonding, and there is
yeah,
this sudden understanding of, okay, we're both from IIMs, and then suddenly they're buddies because they're from IIMs, and that's something like, versus it probably if I'll see two CAs
yeah,
sitting
yeah.
together,
Doesn't happen.
I mean,
Doesn't happen.
unless it goes into, so it's like, yeah, like CAs, so we are both CAs, and
I
definitely
think
there
the
is an acknowledgement,
Yeah,
but
I think the closest you get is when you find like a fellow Big 4 article or a KPMG article. That's where you feel a little bit of, oh,
True.
you're also an article
yes.
from KPMG. Wow, okay, now you're friends. But yeah, the community does not have that cohesiveness that
Bonding.
that
Yeah.
that that
So
these
beyond
schools have.
the degree, it's I believe it's very important that us as CAs, we focus a lot on building our communication skills, and
Yeah,
having that bonding with the whether you're the acquaintance or a manager or a client,
mm.
that just gets the work done quickly,
I think I
like
think it's
you mentioned. So
I think it's
yeah, I
just
mean,
about being
perfect.
nice, dude. I think it's just about being nice and just remembering like somebody's name. It doesn't take much, right? Like
True.
remembering if they like a particular sport, or if they, had something in their, like if they got married, or they had a divorce, whatever. I mean, remember those little details and just ask them how they're doing. And that's all.
The sports is the easiest bonding tool. I mean, that's what I
Yeah.
have realized in my last 5 to 6 years of professional life. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, anyway, so yeah, even
Great.
among CAs, it's more important to have that kind of a bonding, because that is how we are going to grow eventually, and that is what we are trying to do here with
Yeah.
Fintastek. So awesome, Niharika, it
Awesome.
was fantastic to have you here. I mean, on that note, let's you know wrap it up. So, and wish you all the best with your role at Pierian and your firm, and we hope to see it grow exponentially over
Yeah.
the
And
years.
we
So,
and we
and
hope to
thanks
and
for approaching us to
yeah.
do this session, because it was actually wonderful. I mean, looking forward to how this actually comes out in the recorded version.
No, great.
So
Thank you so
Thank
much.